Following the directed. I had neglected to mention earlier that apart from the division leaders, one is elected by UFACE members as the union leader. They have the capability to forcefully halt any major changes, and their propositions can only be stopped if the majority of ministers oppose the decision. Even after UFACE efforts to eliminate political emulation, what was presented to the members? Was it not a premise of voting and acts? Why do some staff members claim this system has been implemented in many servers and countries, yet people are satisfied? Why do they claim that union leader elections will offer leadership opportunities, when being a minister satisfies this same purpose? You cannot run a roadblocks group the same way you run a country. At the heart of this, was it not the media which knew how to make the absurdity of political or military LARPing presentable to the people, until they thought they could entrust genuine progress with emulating others' inconsistencies and failures? Did this not contradict the very pathway I set out on? Did its followers not make a mockery of intellectual strength, by resisting change beneficial for UFACE growth? Is this not a constant attack against the ministers as a whole to undermine their authority? By glorifying LARPer groups, the media often restricts the consistency of any newer groups, including those of the anti-condo community. A sense of leadership or belonging is presented as more necessary than progress or intellectual strength. Thus the LARPers' function is only to break themselves and their members' determination enough for the con member to strike. And what did some of UFACE staff do, while other anti-condo groups began working to remove LARPing? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Every time, I had been the minister to propose the changes to distance UFACE from its democratic structure. I was the one who removed the parties. I was the one who differentiated encouragement material in general from propaganda. I was the one who actively asked for further feedback on how UFACE can further distance itself from LARPing. I was the one who learned that the term ministry has been used by various military LARPer groups. Bringing this discovery to the other ministers, UFACE underwent a significant change to its structure. The title of minister had been replaced by division leader. The new divisions were as follows: Department of Internal Affairs, Commission of Foreign Affairs, Department of Administration, Action and Advocacy Division, Media and Awareness Unit. While I contributed to the idea of renaming the divisions, their replacements were outside of my knowledge. The names of the former three still resembled political terminology. How I addressed this is a story for another chapter. However, the role of union leader remained untouched. Like before, elections for that position occurred every 3 months. Those who won became just attached to their power and never educated the other division leaders in leadership of this scale. This was the very same flaw that prevented me from passing on the ODH's leadership and identifying an adequate successor. None of the division leaders are ready for this level of leadership, and I knew that it would hinder both UFACE impacts and consistency as an anti-condo group. Additionally, major decisions in UFACE were contained in documents, covering each condition in specific detail. While I am not opposed to detailed recording, what I do align with political LARPing is the fact that the documents are called acts. Once again, this illustrates the extent that UFACE origins were personalized around democracy. It was because the election system and acts went untouched for so long that every division leader was vulnerable to instinctively aligning these political components to the anti-condo community. If UFACE was to fully remove its hindrances, I could not remain complacent as the new director of awareness. I needed to prepare myself to oppose every other division leader if necessary. The liberty of a democracy is not safe if the people tolerated the growth of private power. Homogenizing the correlated. While U-Face went under reconstruction, the con leaders began to curry favor with Roblox by recognizing its expansion into an adolescent target audience. They know that Roblox CEO stated,
"Thousands of adults will meet and form real-life relationships in dating experiences on the platform over the next 5 years,"
and profited off this with malicious gratitude. The reason for this disgraceful failure was either because Roblox failed to recognize its danger to society, or half-heartedly pursuing lenience to lessen moderation workload and optimize Roblox earnings from condo game profits. Not a single anti-condo user had the foresight to maneuver methods around this, instead repeating the same method of exclusively reporting and terminating condo accounts. The result was that not only did the outcome remain as unchanging as the methods, but that the public had easier access to con members and were more likely to become one. To avoid this, the ministries, now divisions, had been created. The defensive struggles of the Roblox administration were against both the public and the con members, with the public's temporary outrage never developing a clear methodology or goal. The intelligence of the people failed where Roblox also failed, both underestimating the importance of Roblox globalization to different methods of moderation. They never set expectations after each adjustment or a clear plan. Sometimes, when law enforcement steps in, a con member might be locked up for a few years, but the authorities leave the source untouched. This resulted partially from the con leaders' digital anonymity, exploiting the divided jurisdictions internationally. On the other hand, Roblox perceives themselves as powerless due to the non-affiliation with Discord, whose servers contain the majority of con members and condo game creators. The condo community was much too selfish to acknowledge the very platform that they exist on. While the news hypocritically criticized Roblox's flaw, the con member continues to attack others' mental state and justify their actions by associating impulse with freedom. The condo groups knew how to encourage members into perceiving dissenters as intolerant or troublesome, knowing that the majority rely on others' influence and never attain the self-reflection or analytical abilities necessary for intellectual strength. For the con member, excessive liberty and selfishness was what they value. For the con member, they are justified in that there are more people with the same weaknesses as themselves. For the con member, there is no point in working towards beneficial change. They perceive intelligence as personal satisfaction. Ironically, the con member is neurologically inferior when fully coordinating the intelligence they distort, while being psychologically incapable of recognizing the damage that they inflict on themselves. U-Face can address this problem by reinforcing a culture that rejects instinct, while fostering not just knowledge on the anti-condo community's motivations, but understanding as well. The necessary intelligence cannot just be presented, but internalized as well. Intellectual strength includes understanding that just because something is valuable does not mean it is beneficial. It includes acknowledging that you are not immune to the harms of living by impulse if you actively participate in these actions. Much of human history has revolved around conflict, internal or external. By understanding the fundamental catalyst for societal change, by encouraging beneficial proactivity, the individual can attain true strength. It is precisely for those unable to comprehend strength, for those that deceive themselves with special laws of nature, that the con leader advertises to. Con members deceive each other into believing that their actions are self-beneficial, omitting or remaining oblivious to the many negative impacts. When questioned, the con member's approach is unmasked as malicious psychological sabotage, dismantled easily if exposed to the public or the news. It is because of the con member's deception and anonymity that neither the news nor the authorities often target the condo community itself. As such, individuals who confront condo groups remain unequipped to proceed against the shameful beings, who rely on the principles of freedom and tolerance to drive people into complacency. In the face of all this conflict, what does roadblocks or discord change? Nothing. The same moderation methods yield the same results, while the same con members repeat the same tactics to the same effect. The poisonous cowardice and selfishness of the con member can be likened to a rare, but incurable, disease. No institution knew the methods to eliminate it, and roadblocks did not possess the power to contain the condo community. Every failure, every incident, is a sign of internal decay that would lead to the collapse of not just roadblocks, but the con members' perception of reality. I believe that the anti-condo community, properly educated, can more easily contain or even eliminate this danger. I am certain that others have experienced similar events as I that strengthen the convictions to not just maintain, but spread, self-discipline and intellectual strength. In the future, the con member will certainly raise an uproar if their beliefs are opposed publicly, if an end is put to the impulsive mindset they promote and embody. To leave the condo community to its own devices will bother the present generation just as much as it bothers the con leaders to be permanently stopped. Weak people believe what is forced on them. Strong people believe what they wish to believe, forcing that to be real. Bending the malleable. A further example of the U-face division leaders' half-heartedness and weakness is their resistance to change, even when removing detrimental components. In major roadblocks groups, over-reliance on other political structures was beginning to spread, be it democracy, dictatorships, and at times even religious hierarchies. While structure does benefit group organization, attempting to emulate an unrelated structure would only harm the consistency that would otherwise strengthen a group's cohesion. In this case, the attitude of the union leader and some division leaders can only be designated as inflexible. To fight condo seriously, they would have to discard anything that does not contribute. The personalization of roadblocks groups has already demonstrated to benefit the con member more than it benefits their opposition. The method mattered to the anti-condo community, not just the objective. Even if the results of personalization were not as extreme as becoming a condo group, the inconsistencies would destabilize one's values and sense of identity, since the members and leaders' search for impact will remain fruitless and foster a selfishness or futility that leads to becoming a con member. The degeneration of one's determination to grow, accelerated by the abundance of leadership positions, would continue to dilute the public's understanding of a leader's true values and qualities. Those over-reliant on personal interests will outnumber those who have mastered recognizing and acting on what is beneficial. The devastating consequence of personalization can be seen in following trends. These are the results of molding identity around interests or social compulsion. One leads to reliance on impulse, the other to willpower's degeneration. Today, much of the modern generation strive for the same path, and end in the same goal as the con member. Hastily and indifferently, people denied those unpleasant truths, claiming that whatever trend they choose represents something. The fact that our population is growing more invested into the digital world indicates the impact of major social media platforms, and Roblox is no exception. Despite being advertised as a gaming platform, its users are primarily known for attempting to socialize. The most visible results of digital self-investment can be found, unfortunately, in today's adolescents. In regards to the con member, the adolescents are the product of the spreading contaminations regarding explicit content. The vices of the condo community are revealed in the flaws of its teenage audience. There are different ways that the con member reacts to realizing they both influence and have been influenced negatively. They either see no harm or blind themselves to harm. Both are easy options that restrict intellectual strength. Fortunately for them, the public prefers the lesser effort of threats over actions, blinding themselves to their absurdity and hypocrisy. They speak of the condo community's threat, but never educate themselves on why and how. In doing so, many anti-condo users develop the same complacent pattern. Some of the public are perfectly aware of the terrible consequences that the condo community propagates and will eventually propagate, but in response are convinced that nothing can be done. The only thing they do is let disasters occur under their noses. All this is comfortable and simple, but it cannot be forgotten that an entire generation will fall victim to comfort as much as impulse, unless encouraged otherwise. The excuse that others are at fault for their own downfall scarcely affects our own flaws, other than believing that seeing others' downfall will mitigate their impacts on their victims. The question emerges: what will it take to convince someone to reject personalization, and what is its prevalence? This is the center of the anti-condo community's failures. Those who do not adapt in the test of time will lose their impact, making place for those who either adapt their values or rely on impulse. Since this question primarily regards the anti-condo community, it is one that concerns the flaws that are passed down to our successors. The sense of futility and disbelief vandalize the anti-condo community as much as impulse and comfort govern the con member. How truly helpless was the attitude of the public to the question of personalizing? What was done to logically contain the con member's influence on individuals' behaviors? What was done to address the normalization of impulsive or slothful responses among the public? This can be answered most easily by stating what should have been done. We cannot afford to answer this question unprepared. It has to be understood that the problem is big enough for a solution to be worth the countless failures. To obtain this solution, countless operations and logical measures must be tested. What we needed most was complete understanding that as many as possible needed to draw their attention to the danger of the con member, so every individual is conscious of our struggle's importance. Truly decisive and impactful progression can only become optimal if, in addition to compulsion, the individual realizes the necessity of eliminating the condo community. This requires extensive understanding that excludes all other problems that only serve to distract progression. In all cases where tasks are perceived as impossible, attention must be completely concentrated on the solution. Only then can people be willing and able to push their intellectual strength and reach great achievements. The only place where your dream becomes impossible is in your own thinking. Envying the admirable. Complete focus applies to individuals who want to achieve great goals. They will only be able to accomplish this gradually, and they will always have to unite their energies on this task, splitting progress into portions and completing them bit by bit. Any objective that can be completed all at once is not an objective that would make a major impact nor develop intellectual strength further. As such, working towards the Kondo community's removal requires precision that complements consistent effort. The necessity in tackling such a difficult road is to succeed in representing, to those affected by the problem, how you reliably identified the problem and worked resiliently to the solution. The public cannot see the whole path without experiencing futility and disbelief on whether the outcome is attainable. Even some anti-Kondo users will keep the goal in mind, but can only partially see the steps leading up to the outcome. Even they can more effectively catalyze the end of Kondos if they carefully isolate each step and address each one with the same enthusiasm they once addressed the entire problem. Only in this way can an anti-Kondo user be protected against the sense of futility, renewing their beliefs that the Kondo community can be stopped. Regarding my role as a U-Face division leader, I contemplated on why it was little more effective than other anti-Kondo groups in encouraging the public. This directed my attention to the flaws of most anti-Kondo groups. Traditional methods of reporting or raiding have been hammered as the only approach used. Even with my media and awareness unit, not much was available to the members themselves. U-Face needed to use all available means to progress against the Kondo community. And this is where I found a potential solution. 3 out of 5 divisions both involved administrative work and limited direct contribution. The Department of Internal Affairs, Commission of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Administration all maintained limited potential against Kondos, yet I couldn't deny their importance to U-Face structure. To reinforce U-Face serious effort, I was willing to make sacrifices. To fight against Kondos demands a fight against personalization, against traditional methods, against universal impulses and comfort. As such, I began planning to merge these 3 divisions into one. However, this would leave 2 division leaders without a division, and I did not want to take the chance they are unwilling to sacrifice their leadership. I tackled this problem piece by piece. As Kondo groups often used bots to upload Kondo games, what stops the anti-Kondo community from using their own bots? My first step was to establish a group chat, compiling all the best coders that I could find in the anti-Kondo community. By good fortune, Argf was a decent coder himself. This granted him the position to lead another division when I eventually converted the group chat into its own division. While the coders began working on anti-Kondo projects, I then turned my attention to the remaining division leader, YB. He had been inactive for a long time, and when he finally returned, he expressed disinterest as the Commissioner of Foreign Affairs. This left Lord Vader to soon inherit the 3 divisions when they merged. Of course, I didn't stop at simply collecting the coders. I supervised their progress, despite not knowing how to code myself. I knew how significant coding would be in the digital age, and took online coding lessons, but never developed this skill set. While gathering coders from anti-Kondo groups, I couldn't help but feel envious at the ease in which the coders impacted entire Kondo groups, from creating games that report Kon members who join, to converting Kondo uploaders into spam bots. Regardless, I knew this was a valuable asset to U-Face, and an opportunity to maintain the interests of anti-Kondo users interested in coding. Just as Kon members cannot change when forced into moral lectures or noble intentions, anti-Kondo users cannot be forced into certain skill sets or interests. The most reliable way to address this is to reshape values, though even this proves less optimal than simply aligning the conditions with the user's interests. If I were to devote myself to learning coding now, It would require some detachment from anti-Kondo progress, splitting my efforts and achieving no outcome. Paradoxically, consider the fact that the conditions of a Kondo group exclusively promote values that align with impulsive interests, restricting any change or growth. To them, every innate quality must be preserved, regardless of how racist, non-consensual, or fetishized each Kon member is. What purpose does such an institution serve, other than monetary profit or malicious selfishness? Is this not a culture that propagates intellectual weakness, that rejects the strengths of humanity? Thus, any skill set growth among the Kondo groups degenerates rapidly, with one exception: coding. Kon leaders were willing to pay users to develop explicit Roblox avatars, animations, and game scripts that bypass Roblox community standards. Even they envied the Kondo game coders to the point they were willing to make monetary payments to break legally binding conditions of platform usage. It was no coincidence that differences in coding abilities prompted Kon leaders to dox each other. Under these conditions, it cannot be denied that the Kondo industry's negative impacts are both widespread and lasting. Both the Kondo and anti-Kondo users pursued a skill set that I could not develop, yet that doesn't stop me from contributing against Kondos. My passion for improvement developed the proper knowledge regarding the anti-Kondo community's methods. Now, my envy over those with impactful skill sets helped me to identify, centralize, and mutually develop the anti-Kondo users who can overcome our community's limitations. Transform jealousy to admiration, and what you admire will become part of your life. Misinforming the gullible. Roblox standards of a successful game, which can be achieved through the correct bypasses as well as genuine development, concerns itself too much with popularity rather than quality. A game designed for Kon members even reached the front page for teenage Roblox users with new accounts. Granted, the developer exchange program does require
having compiled with Roblox terms of use.
But this won't become a factor if a Kondo game earns 30,000 Robux before it is removed. It does not help that some Kon leaders facilitate payments on an alternate website to simultaneously record doxing information. On the subject of success, people must become aware that developing a famous game, rather than an infamous one, requires attention towards the community. The number of Kon members in Roblox can only grow, and it is especially crucial that game developers keep their game healthy from any Kon infestations. In the Kondo community, no one concerned themselves about the truth of their impacts. They simply continue disregarding both their body and mind, believing that by evading discipline, they will achieve happiness and contentment. Instead, its consequences drive them towards the very opposite: over-reliance on self-validity and a hunger for explicit material. It is no accident that the Kon members primarily inhabit Roblox, a game revolving around social interaction, despite over 56% of its player base consisting of users under 17 years old. However, very rarely is intelligent resistance offered against the Kondo community, for the simple reason that the Roblox community is itself as unequipped as the administrators they criticize. In the times where popularity rules over logic, the public and administration remain incapable of both defending themselves and enforcing their willpower. By establishing divisions specializing in more than just reporting, UFace aims to create this intelligent resistance. This is what I aimed for in uniting the anti-Kondo community's coders, the same willpower I exercised in creating at least one piece of encouragement material every week. This is what I aim for as I continue to prepare the smooth transition away from needless administrations and away from democratic LARPing. Frequently, the first reason for the adherence to popularity returns to personalization. The emphasis on trivial interests, while neglecting to apply this knowledge, encourages the early emergence of impulsiveness and reliance on comfort. Those who are unsatisfied with their current knowledge succumb much less than those who believe themselves fully knowledgeable, since the latter's minimal impact misinforms them that individuals have no impact against condos. Adequately educated individuals must bear this in mind. We must consider that the strong human will perceive education differently than the prematurely corrupted. Therefore, to train intellectual strength requires the productivity of as much free time as possible. As the con members become more numerous on the digital world, no one is safe even from their own homes. The mind must be reinforced enough to keep out impulse regardless of exhaustion. Given the variety of experiences among each individual, to educate yourself means drawing upon your own knowledge just as much as another's, rather than completely relying on one or the other. We must also eliminate the subconscious that reliability is the only defining factor of truth. Reliability
refers to the consistency and reproducibility of measurements, especially when used repeatedly under the same conditions.
This reflects the number of people who rely exclusively on influencers, rather than ensuring information is valid.
Validity in research refers to the accuracy and meaningfulness, relevance, of measurements.
Invalid research methodologies are observable in some news articles. Media education or child protection specialists, despite understanding the flawed nature of Roblox moderation systems, are unable to address the underlying influences leading to the condo community's growth. A director of Ottawa's media education claims,
"A user would have to go out of their way looking for these condos in the gaming platform,"
completely disregarding the factor of con members actively bringing Roblox players into the condo community. Similarly, a deputy principal tells children that
if you see people laying around in their undies, someone offers you money to do something, or someone asks you to follow them on to Snapchat or TikTok, you need to immediately tell your trusted adult.
Similarly, this does not address the core problem of the con member's influence, associating freedom with impulse to convince the intellectually underdeveloped to forego disciplinary teachings or values. The closest a news article has come to proposing a practical solution was a digital psychologist analysis on the impacts of anonymity in the digital world. She is aware that
people behave differently in the metaverse, just as they do online. You have the anonymity and you have the disinhibition effect. This platform provides you with the playground to do anything you want.
The majority of condo community resources are either impractical ideas or individual experiences, hence why the con member is able to continue thriving on multiple platforms, not just Discord or Roblox. One Roblox user became a con member after
it popped up on my For You page on TikTok.
Even a condo game video on YouTube can birth a major con leader. In another interview, a Roblox game creator was sought out by a con leader and offered payment for making condo games, despite referring to their work as
sadly.
Anyone who possesses independent thinking must realize that the problem was never the children encountering con members, but the con members encountering children and adolescents. The culture of a condo group develops ideas and impulses where even the con members have little understanding of such things. Both the direct and indirect educational contributions can be studied regarding the condo community, and none of it was gratifying to the audience. To mistrust science and deny the validity of scientific method is to resign your job as a human. Falsifying the facade. In the condo community, people become intellectually weak before reaching adulthood. Sometimes the public learns of insights that infiltrate the emotional lives of Roblox players as young as 11. Who will be surprised that even in these age groups will condo games or groups become recommended? Is it not deplorable to see a good number of these weak and corrupted individuals obtaining their sexual experience from Roblox? Anyone who wants to attack the condo community must eliminate its spiritual basis. We must clear out all conditions inflating freedom or tolerance, and it must be done consistently regardless of any loud opposition. If we do not integrate a culture of discipline and proactivity into our present-day environment, intellectual strength will become harder to obtain over time. Anyone who refuses to see the con member's threat becomes an accomplice to the gradual degeneration of our future, whether we like it or not. In YouFace, this strict culture extends to various fields. Removing suggestive messages or images, frequent activity checks throughout YouFace, sending videos that align against condos, all of it intentionally structured to optimize proactive anti-condo mindsets. In all areas of life, objectives and pathways must be refined against hypocrisy and degeneracy. Personal interests must never overcome human intellectual development. To ensure people voluntarily recognize the benefits, I stacked YouFace with multiple opportunities to practice disciplinary contributions against condos, while still being able to enjoy themselves. It was not long before the anti-condo coders were able to make significant progress. Members had access to a bot that not only compiles con members based on keywords, but can directly send reports to Roblox moderation's email. The members will be required to manually write reasons, which then need approval from the coders to determine if these reasons were adequate for the report. This way, the Action and Advocacy Division was already benefiting by understanding what con members use to attract and corrupt other Roblox users. But in reporting, too, there can be no lenience. Every single piece of evidence must be included into the reports. To leave out potentially incriminating factors leaves the possibility for Roblox moderation to disregard this report, allowing the incurable con member to continue corrupting healthy individuals. It does not help that very few of the successful terminations directly prevent alternate accounts from being created. To leniently trust one individual, hundreds more are allowed to fall into the con member's clutches. To prevent defective people from accessing not just Roblox, but all social media, is most reasonable and more lenient in the long run. It will spare both Roblox reputation and thousands of undeserved descents into degeneracy. As the con member's influence grows, it becomes more necessary to segregate the con member not just digitally, but in real life as well, to bless and protect all those who know the con member. To overcome personalization prepares individuals against the factors that propagate innate weaknesses. All depraved actions derive from a disorderly mind governed by instinct. But how did Roblox try to prepare its audience against this outcome? Assuredly, the administrators recognize the condo community, though they are possibly unable to conceive their consequences. Instead of thorough reforms, Roblox preferred to improve traditional methods. They worked on the outcome and never touched the causes. They examined and supervised the con member, and in any case of wrongdoing, let them run loose among the rest of the player base. Roblox administration's practical application regarding its community standards is a near-complete failure. In the first place, the con member, ensnared by deception and denial, will refuse to believe that they are in the wrong. Unless they are a con leader, the only thing that they believe changes is the pleasure of their experience. What else can logic do in the face of irrationality? Whenever recruitment is pursued by an anti-condo group or for the coding group, the history of the recruit remains relevant. Have they fallen into corruption at one point? Are there not numerous cases in which con members apparently cured their habits before returning to them shortly after? Practically, even legal punishment of a corrupted individual contributes non-existent change. Thus, the only reliable methods are prevention or segregation. One thing was certain: despite all measures, the number of con members continued to increase. Any lenience has proven to no longer be effective, indicated by Roblox's failure to remove or even contain the condo community. Beneficial change comes from the assertive wholehearted and not the lenient weaklings. Lenience does not just propagate the condo community either. I have repeated the term culture multiple times, but not once have I referred to ethnicity or background. Instead, culture refers to the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or organization. In UFace, I had worked to maintain a culture of complete dedication. And what happens? Lord Vader distracts every member of UFace with a union leader election. Already the culture that I have built up was starting to be knocked down by other division leaders. I had suspected this might happen, and yet I couldn't help but feel frustrated over my efforts being unraveled. In this period of time, UFace began descending into cultural decay. This would not have happened had I not overlooked the division leaders themselves when reinforcing productivity exclusively against condos. Thanks to my mistake, the other division leaders tolerated this distraction while UFace members looked on in dismay. Even more frustratingly, it was my role, leading the media and awareness unit, to prevent UFace from receding into political LARPing. I had failed to prevent Vader from making the same mistakes as Nimriarad. I had failed to prevent the regressive development of the other division leaders, which led to the disillusionment of UFace members. Of course, what good would it be to simply lament over this? I decided that now was the time to dismantle the union leader elections, to finally remove the last components of political LARPing that Nimriarad set up. However, I concluded that I had to use a method that many would not have expected. If someone becomes union leader, they are more likely to become attached to their power and hold on to the position. They had the power to make decisions regarding the overall functioning of the union. And by functioning, this included the disbanding of the union leader position. It would be difficult to justify allowing the same union leader to govern UFace, especially when the union leader is human, and thus prone to misjudgment. To minimize any detrimental consequences, the union leader position had to be removed along with the elections. To balance out the union leader's decisions, should a proposal be deemed unsuitable or harmful to the interests of the union, the council may vote to overrule the decision. I had mentioned that some union leaders supported the democratic emulation, but not all. Meanwhile, those who didn't were more likely to enter the election. I had accounted for this too. Those who lose the election will be more likely to support disbanding the union leader position, as their attitudes towards their loss would likely be bitter. As so, my plan to dismantle the election process was to enter the election myself and win. My willingness to participate in the very system I despised further illustrates my detachment from personalization. After becoming union leader, the losers would become more attentive to the reasons why this democratic process is unfit for you face, especially coming from the only person who would lose something from disbanding the union leader position. Just as the con members feign change, just as Nimrod and Lord Vader feigned dedication, I had to feign interest in the election. Anyone who thinks an important man will forget past grievances just because he's received some new promotion must think again. In tolerating the unforgivable. Once we look into meso-level societal development, we already see how far we have engaged in intellectual regression. Commonly in the digital world we encounter those who rely on emotion and impulse, even in their messages. In them, we recognize the extent that intellectual weakness can become propagated, especially from the con member. It was a sad sign that the youth could not find any safety in the digital world. Its access was distributed before any removals, not just restrictions, were applied on degenerate or corruptive content. Such precautions are especially important in places where the youth develop their experiences, among leisures, and not just direct education. How would digital administrators have approached such a precaution, and were they aware of its necessity? Even if they justly implemented systems that manually filter away all detrimental material, how would the likes of Larry Page, Andrew Weinreich, or David Basaki account for the vulnerability of the public to impulse and comfort? The condo community demonstrates the direction they help push the public towards, regarding morality, discipline, and platform conditions as old, outworn, and obsolete. The more selfish and degenerate the condo community, the more its preservation becomes influential, garnering both appeal and deterrence. In such an environment, the con member prefers to disregard history and values by condemning selflessness and passing off prostitution or pornography as empowering. Hence, attention is drawn exclusively to adherence or dissent regarding morality, completely overlooking the other factors that the condo community threatens. In trying to extinguish the intellectual strength necessary for human progress, the con leader seeks to exploit the weakened public minds for future advertisement and profit. The con member does not have to fear public consequence or even retribution. The condo community considers impulse as human or beneficial when it is the exact opposite. Once again, it is illustrated that only those acting upon universal components, such as intellectual strength, can adequately prepare themselves against the con member. Regarding the filtration over moderation of digital material, personalization has grown more than ever, even beyond the general public, but also the attitudes governing the anti-condo community. When the only visible method to remove LARPing is to engage with it, it is clear just how much personal interests are entrenched in perceived superiority. Even from its early discussion in The Witness, the Dunning-Kruger effect demonstrates how
people with low ability do not have the necessary critical ability and self-awareness to recognize how low their ability actually is.
this is especially prevalent in those who are appointed leadership positions or establish a group structure based on personal opinion, appointing non-existent value to their own insignificance. In political life, if power is given, the leadership will use the most extreme methods or excuses to preserve this power or shut themselves away from criticism. Therefore, if any individual tries to illogically deny feedback, for this reason alone they are worthy of suspicion and caution. The reason for such actions, after all, lie in insecurity or malicious intent. A truly beneficial leader would always build reasoning for what portions of the structure contribute and what portions are unnecessary. This demonstrates true intellectual strength that is supported by established logic. After all, the development of human society is built on the findings of each generation. Thus, my objective in removing the union leader position is not to tear down the whole structure, but to remove the unsuitable and continue building from there. The con member would be entitled to reject the past and destroy it to build up their own inferiority. It was for this reason that we must act not on just the values of discipline and proactive growth, but also discuss its progression from the past and present. The saddest thing about the con leader was not only the lasting incapability of growth it fosters, but the extent it vandalizes societal progress and strengths for its own benefit. It should be recognized that the Kondo community promotes no present or future cultural progression, but instead destroys and insults all structure and beneficial effort. In the practice of tolerance, one's enemy is the best teacher. Imitating the pretenders. In recent times, anti-Kondo groups allied with U-Face began to gradually lose their objective and regress into discussion groups, with little to no contribution against Kondos. The restructuring of these groups is the consequence of the fact that its only collective contribution is reporting, and little more. No coding projects. No encouragement material. No studying or research. As such, members never form a closer bond with the anti-Kondo objective, which combines with the general facade of insignificance forced upon smaller anti-Kondo groups. How, in view of such repetitive methodology, can any dedication be maintained against a threat more significant than one's personal interests? No one will be attached to any community that offers no more benefits than others. This is what differentiates U-Face, the numerous divisions and a transition away from political LARPing. But, as if this were not enough, even the major anti-Kondo influencers grew relatively poorer in contribution methods. They grow more reliant on spreading awareness alone rather than making permanent contributions. Their very awareness they promote is more standardized and gives the same level of depth as any amateur student. It has reliability and little else. What recent times have added to our understanding of Kondos is either inadequate or scarcely known. For instance, take the news or drama content creators, and you will note how the same knowledge has been repeated like a broken recorder. The essential point is that the present and past demonstrate no future of intellectual strength, which is crucial to remaining productive and resilient against the con member. This is because the anti-Kondo community draws strength from not the wealth or popularity of group leaders, but from the resilience and dedication of the members. Despite being promoted in hundreds of Roblox groups, each one who sought wealth or popularity, especially from personalization, is insignificantly short-lived compared to secondary importance. All these results are the consequences of an absent and uniform philosophy and attitude towards the central objective. That is why, when leading a group for the first time, anti-Kondo users emulate their predecessors without learning the intention behind each method. That is why the LARPers emulate other military or political structures without recognizing the advantages and detriments accompanying it. This is why, even after many lawsuits, news articles, and videos regarding the Kondo community, anti-Kondo methodology has scarcely developed outside of U-Face. It is through all this that politics becomes stylish to the anti-Kondo community, including U-Face democratic election. However, I had no intention of letting my participation restrict its usefulness to solely the union leaders disbanding. The election itself is a test of my capabilities as the Media and Awareness Unit's leader, as well as how effectively I present my objectives and information to UFACE members. During and after my short planned period as union leader, the main focus of my role remains consistency and productivity. I have seen why anti-condo groups have fallen as quickly as they have risen. I have seen the ones distracted. I have seen the same methods, with the same outcome, throughout the same platform. I am the one to bring the necessary change. I am the one who studies how the con members, as well as anti-condo groups, think and act. I am the one who will break the stalemate against condos. I am the face of UFACE objective the con member intends to spread innate weakness. To UFACE, I encourage them to choose the one who knows intellectual strength. Like with the public, most of UFACE does not consist of philosophers. Faith, not logic, is the sole foundation of their moral attitudes. I might have overestimated the power of truth in comparison to ideals, despite the growth of secularization in the Western world. Ideals had failed countless times regarding the anti-condo community's results, evident in political and militaristic personalization and the inconsistency succeeding this. I knew that only through aligning interests with dedication can I eliminate this mistake, otherwise there will be a repetition of historical failures. And so, I revolved my campaign around progression, change, and my qualifications for making this work. Of course, I didn't stop at my own knowledge. I studied the speech tactics of notable orators, and worked to implement them into my own statements. I had the concentration, the clarity, the preceding knowledge in both speeches and the anti-condo community. So where did my plan go so wrong? It is better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation. Alarming the surprised. In the very political field I played out, the observant eye could determine institutional flaws that were the signs of approaching collapse. The aimlessness of the current anti-condo community was just as apparent to the other candidates as it was to me. However, there was a major difference that became my shortcoming, where others were able to draw upon a different meaning. My main message was to redirect all possibilities towards a successful progression towards the accomplishment of UFACE goals. However, this was the sole outcome I had illustrated. In contrast, the other candidates appealed to the social aspects of UFACE, such as communication and events. The very same aspects that I had succeeded most in through integrating brainstorming into my division's monthly progress check. Just as the political LARPer was unequipped for an anti-condo group, I was new to the political setting. Here, members were unprepared to think anything for themselves, and time was too short to learn relevant information from others. Even before a single vote is casted, neither the candidates nor the voters were prepared for such a sudden deviation to the traditional objective. When you combine irresponsibility and popularity into the heart of an institution, it becomes a major weakness. I recognized it, my members recognized it, but I had not realized the latter. It took longer to reinforce anti-condo dedication in UFACE members compared to peace. Hence in my campaign I omitted my objective to dismantle the union leader role. Would this not have implied I was constructing a dictatorship instead of an organization? I had been too focused on the future to capitalize on my efforts in the past, and this was truly detrimental in a field revolving around the illusion of choice. Half-hearted was my effort in perfecting my campaign, as even in my encouragement material I specialized in showing, not telling. Half-hearted were my statements compared to the policies proposed by the other candidates. Even my loss would have been bearable if the mindset of military LARPing had not taken hold on the winner of that election. It doesn't matter that this is just what they've been doing for multiple years. We've seen the danger of inflexibility even in condo groups. To say this system has been implemented in many servers and countries, yet people are satisfied applies to the very same industry we know is dangerous to everyone. If
people always thought we were LARPers,
we're supposed to fix that, not dismiss it. While the con members proclaim to more and more through deceitful advertising and twisted justifications, the LARPers continued to obstruct any productive activity or training. No wonder there were such little informational resources regarding the con member. This lack of adequate knowledge is the result of the half-heartedness and sheer difference in skill set between the popular political approach and a truly dedicated anti-condo attitude. Assuming is the root of all disappointments. Blaming the responsible. Oddly, the public becomes most invested in the anti-condo community only when it becomes more active or impactful. In such cases, popularity over progress became more favored, as many sought to preserve this newfound power rather than utilize it, given its inevitably temporary nature. Frustratingly, this was the optimal time for the group's progress to improve. At the same time, the public knew little about the full danger of condos. It takes clever and resilient use of encouragement material for them to recognize, let alone accept, the impact and deceit of the con leader and the condo community, alongside the subhuman mindsets instilled in con members. Where there were missed opportunities, there were also those that can be created. We must recognize that most of our weaknesses are common among the entire anti-condo community, though some were obscured. One of these weaknesses discussed were the rigid nature of contribution, often through reporting, available to anti-condo users. Despite my previous plan's failure, I returned to my previous progress, in this case establishing the Division of Innovation in U-Face. ARGS, despite lacking a division and possessing the coding abilities required for the Division of Innovation, rejected the offer to lead it. Instead, he proposed for the developer of a condo scraper to become its division leader. A scraper is a tool that compiles con members or groups based on keywords, indicating that the new division leader was experienced with coding, though will need training in leadership. Regardless, my assembled coders successfully became an official division under my suggestion. After the Division of Innovation was established, I contemplated my plan to remove U-Face political components, the election process and the unnecessary union leader position. If I were to continue with my original plan of utilizing the other candidates' frustration, not only will I have less people to work with, but my reasoning risked accusations of inadequate sportsmanship. As someone who constantly combats irrationality in the form of con members, I knew it would be inconvenient to allow this to happen. Knowing full well now that both the members and division leaders favored contribution credit, I worked toward proactively establishing various acts, which I also plan to rename in the future. For U-Face to increase in intentional productivity, I could not rely on the current union leader remaining detached to his new power. Instead, I needed to reinforce my own through proactivity. The purpose: contribute enough for the union leader title to become functionally redundant, while simultaneously compiling evidence of a division leader's ability to fulfill the same role. Unintentionally amplifying my contribution was the immediate increase in inactivity from the union leader. As long as U-Face is not hindered by this, it was no obstacle to my strategy. However, I ran into a problem. My contributions needed a sense of urgency to optimize decisiveness. Spineless complacency and naive faith to wait for other division leaders proved ineffective even before the previous election. As such, punctuality became reinforced, with my deadline system from the Media and Awareness Unit arriving in council decisions. Overall, I was able to make 2 major changes before the first cracks in my new plan emerged. 1. Contribution Act. Inactive U-Face members are to provide a reason for their inactivity within 1 week. If this repeats 3 times, the member is to be removed from U-Face. 2. 3 Strikes Act. If a member required disciplinary moderation 3 times, they would be removed from U-Face without question. This was intended to eliminate internal conflict and drama to optimize consistency. While I intended to keep my progress going, the third candidate prematurely called for an end to the union leader position. I didn't know whether this sudden change was an emotional outburst or logical realization. What I knew was that if I passed up this opportunity, it could result in this division leader's demotion, preventing any contribution to my current objective. Already the current division leader was pushing back, and the outcome became uncertain. Scrapping my original plan to bide my time, I decided to present my reasoning for why the union leader and election process hinders more than it helps U-Face productivity. It was time to reinstate the culture of consistency that had taken noticeable damage. If you take responsibility for yourself, you will develop a hunger to accomplish your dreams. Associating the relevant. Anyone who is dedicated to glory or strength will inevitably be slandered, hated, combated, and feared by inferior people. The fact that the rage of various trolls was directed primarily against major anti-Kondo influencers permits us to recognize the growing resistance that benefits the con member. Without this obstruction, however, the independent development of smaller anti-Kondo groups would have been delayed longer, as different positions require approaches. What I owe to the anti-Kondo community is nothing short of everything. I had been guilty of the very same faults I now warn against, and as such continued the weakening habit seen in many anti-Kondo groups. If U-Face were to avoid my same mistakes, in this case an incapable leader with an inactive team, I had to foster unconditional responsibility at a time it grew rare. Evading responsibility was becoming more common, amplified by the political structure held by many anti-Kondo groups. Members must train to prove their sense of superiority in an age where anonymity-fueled cowardice and selflessness was perceived as stupidity, where the intelligent are associated with the egotistical. As young as kindergarten, we were taught to embody resilient learning and proactively oppose the malicious. This is how important the anti-Kondo community's values are. Undoubtedly, their importance would have long vanished before adolescence had no one provided a continuous renewal. In regards to U-Face, we see the terrible redundancy of the union leader role, which contributes nothing to the anti-Kondo community apart from approving regulations that even amateurish administration is capable of doing. Even in this case, the current union leader delays responsibility and only through my own reasoning decides to set up a 3-day poll. Fortunately, I did not repeat my mistakes from the election. Even before the poll was established, I kept my intentions transparent, reinforcing how the union leaders' roles are accomplishable by the division leaders or the Commission of Administrative Affairs. To emulate another system, especially as irrelevant as politics, fails to reap any benefits while inheriting its flaws, once again implying a false association between the anti-condo community and political LARPing. By returning personalization, U-Face would be more vulnerable to the envious or malicious, as trolling heavily relies on emotional reactions to be effective. My devotion for the anti-condo community, as difficult as they are to reach, had not clung to idealism. Instead of rejecting the widespread greed and materialism, I utilized these in my worldview. As such, I performed much more efficiently in the field of debate instead of politics. With a narrow outcome of 3-2, the union leader role was decided to be removed. Lord Vader and the union leader had attempted to retain this role, but every other division leader recognized its redundancy and the rationality of its removal. Unexpectedly accomplishing my objective early, I immediately had acts renamed to requirements before redirecting my attention to U-Face itself. Without issue, it continued refining what the anti-condo community needed most: unyielding dedication to learning and stopping the condo industry. To learn to contribute, they must practice how to learn. This characterizes the intellectually strong, those prepared to contribute significantly against condos. It was not unsurprising that the envious and greedy, in their blindness or selfishness, failed to recognize that to propagate intellectual strength is both more difficult and beneficial than solely developing it. In the age of distraction, single tasking is a superpower. Schooling the untrained. Producing encouragement material weekly, with the second highest member count and a variety of contributors, the Media and Awareness Unit was the most organized and contributing division in U-Face. They may be accused of making no direct impact, though other groups restrict themselves solely to this and make no progress anyway. What other groups or divisions did not possess was the disciplined consistency reinforced within my division's members. It was better to be simultaneously enlightened and devoted against condos than to ignorantly repeat the same methodology to boredom and incompetence. If people want to pretend that U-Face was too strict, expose them to the following question: what group was more consistently directed and diverse in contributors than U-Face? Even when training my representative of awareness, I drilled in my method and monitored their implementations, preparing for the day that I would step down from my position of leading the Media and Awareness Division. In other words, my contribution will not stop even if I leave U-Face. Since the start of U-Face, it must be admitted that much has changed to distinguish it, in my eyes, from other anti-condo groups. Notably, their transition towards independence from political views that have no effect on the anti-condo movement. A culture of democratic emulation was replaced with individual ability and competence. Combine that with resilience, adaptability, and proactivity I contribute, and U-Face is on its way to resolving the qualities lacking in many anti-condo groups. A group's strength is not based on parliamentary sessions, protective laws, or member count to frighten its opposition, but on the general confidence and competency of its leadership and community. This productive coherence results only from an unshakable faith in the anti-condo community's current and future benefits, against the corruptive and harmful regression propagated by con members. Groups that last for the longest times are not maintained by the pressure of tradition, but by their consistency with universal objectives and their efficiency at advancing the strengths of members and the public alike. As the condo industry continued its parasitic profiting, undermining individuals' strengths as humans, we must remember that numerous platforms have suffered, perhaps even more than Roblox, from the con members' ideology, and yet did not receive the infamy for moderation incompetence that Roblox has. If we consider Roblox's weaknesses before recent years were ignored in favor of its strengths, the deepest reason to the prevalence of the condo community lay in the public's failures to recognize the role of innate weakness towards the condo group's growth. They failed to remember the importance of historical and intellectual development through eliminating, as well as overcoming, hindrances. Events in one's life are not dictated by chance, but choice. Choice regarding the preservation and propagation of resilience and belief, propagation of what we know is beneficial. This must be reintegrated into subconsciousness as the reason for our actions. Your actions dictate your identity, which dictates what you learn.